Let's go back to our top story now in BC's wildfire situation. Bob Gray is a wildland fire ecologist, and he says our situation in the province that we're facing has been a long time coming, and a lot more prevention will help us, but that will take work. Bob joins me live now from Chilliwack. Bob, the last week and a half has been a difficult one for British Columbians living through these fires and watching the destruction. Also for the rest of the province, just, sitting back and looking at all of this. Do you think any of this could have been prevented?
I think on a large scale, it could have been prevented, especially around communities. I was part of the Filman report back in 2004, and we identified a number of key recommendations that, if applied at the appropriate scale, would have had a significant impact on fire-threatening communities and key infrastructure.
What are some of those recommendations that you think should have been put into place that weren't?
Well, certainly policy shifts and incentives to help the industry thin out the low value timber, sort of the small diameter trees and thick dense forests that need a subsidy. They can't be treated because of the low merchantability, and things like prescribed burning, dealing with tenure system, all these various incentives that would have enabled us to move on a larger area more quickly and deal with the fuels at proper scale.
It seems like this comes up every fire season, and clearly we've been talking about it since 2003. Prescribed burning is also something we hear a lot about from various First Nations as well. Why is it that we aren't doing this work?
Well, part of the problem is funding. You need very consistent, stable funding to build up the capacity in the workforce to do it. There are service policy issues in the way. The ministry will only train and certify their own people. They won't train anybody from industry or First Nations groups. So that becomes problematic. There's various permits that we have to go through to get things. It often takes a year or more to get through the permitting process to get something done. So there's all kinds of issues there. And then we've just lost capacity. Prior to the mid-1990s, BC was burning over 100,000 hectares a year, and we just don't have those key people with the skill set to do it anymore. So it's going to take time to ramp up, but lots of barriers in the way of doing more prescribed burning for sure.
Yeah, I imagine cost is a barrier as well, but how does that compare to the price of fighting these fires year after year?
Well, that's a very good point. The cost of doing the mitigation at scale that we talk about always comes up, and we're talking billions of dollars to do that. But these fire seasons they're 10 billion plus fire seasons. I mean, at the end of this year, the province will release a figure on what the suppression costs were, and it'll be $800 million or something. Well, the real costs are anywhere from 6 to 26 times that. So I mean, the EU just announced that their fire seasons are 21 billion euro fire seasons every year. So in the US their fire seasons are 75 to $310 billion a year. So ours are definitely in that range. And so it doesn't make sense to use the excuse that it's going to cost too much up front when on the back end it's costing us 10 times more. So we can't use that excuse anymore.
Wildland fire ecologist Bob Gray, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.